everyone wants to start making their way back to their seats, it might not be plugged in. It's okay. So, there it is. So we just want to say hi to those joining us online via the internet. Wish you were here. You just missed some really good worship and some really good prayer time. And we love the benefit of being able to join and watch online. But man, you're missing out if you're not in this place. And that's not like a be guilty kind of thing. That's just, we talked a couple weeks ago about that idea of like, you should have been there. And I can't describe to you what you're missing. And so let that be your invitation. Come, join us live. We'd love to have you. Bring a friend. God's doing things in our church, and we're just along for the ride. If you don't know me, I think most of you do, if not all of you. My name's Michael, and my wife and I lead here at Discovery Church, and I'm still just a little bit. Something's going on back there. Devil, get out of here. Today's been kind of a weird day for me. If I'm just being real, you probably noticed that already. But I've just been just kind of thinking through some things and just about what church is and what it means to lead a church and what we should be striving after as a church. And you all have kind of been on this journey with us, right? As we've been exploring these ideas and tracking down what our values are and what we want to be as a church. And as we've been going through this, we kind of narrowed it down to what we believe are our core values. And these values are things that we just believe that should be the foundation of everything that we do. And no matter what different activities we do, different gatherings we do, different places we go, all of the different happenings around and within the church, we believe that at the core, at the bottom of all of this, there should be a level ground, a foundation of what really props up the church. And these things were put together really by the church. We had a meeting early in January where we kind of asked you all to express what do you see in a church? How would you complete the sentence, I see a church that blank? And as we filled in those gaps and as we looked at what the church is and what the church should be and what we should be doing as a church, we narrowed down to 6 and then 7 different characteristics within our church. And we've been systematically going through these different characteristics of the church or values of the church. And we've only got a couple weeks left of this series. And today is actually, to me, one of the ones that I feel strongest about. And if you spend any time around me whatsoever, I think you'll learn it pretty quick. But today we're going to talk about our church serves each other. Our church serves each other. And so there's this idea of service for each other, and really what does it mean to serve each other? And I believe that it's kind of a two-faceted kind of thing. They're serving each other within the church, and then they're serving each other outside of the church. And I believe everything that we do, we have to learn to do here first. We're never going to pray for people out there until we learn to pray for each other in here. We're never going to learn to teach and proclaim the gospel out there if we don't learn to preach and proclaim the gospel in here. We're never going to disciple out there if we don't learn how to disciple in here. And so if we're not comfortable standing in a prayer circle in a gym at our church service, praying for people that we know and call our church family, we're never going to have the boldness or the confidence to ask someone in a Chick-fil-A parking lot if we can pray for them, or someone in the grocery store line if we can pray for them. And I really believe that we should be out there praying for people. I really believe we should be out there sharing our faith with people. I really believe we should be out there ministering to people. But I also believe we learn those skills here, and there's something really fascinating and really beautiful that happens when we apply these attributes within the context of our congregation. What you see in the early church, in Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 3, Acts chapter 4, you see the early church coming together, that they are taking care of one another, and they've cultivated such an environment within their own community that it becomes attractive to those outside of their community. And that's really where the growth of the church exploded from. That you have this group of Christians that just say, I'm going to be loyal and dedicated to the teachings of Christ, to following Christ's example, and to taking care of one another. They literally were selling all of their stuff. They were pooling their resources. Acts chapter 2 says nobody was in need of anything. Nobody was in need of anything. Does that mean that there were no poor people in Rome or there were no poor people in Jerusalem? No, that's not what that means at all. What that means is for those who belonged to the body, they were taken care of. And it was so attractive that those who were outside of the body wanted to come and to join the body. And so as we talk about serving today and serving one another, I just want to kind of keep that in mind of it starts here. Taking care of needs starts here. And then it expands out of here. And so we're going to get a little bit more in depth in this in a minute, but you see in the book of Matthew, you see that Jesus talks about taking care of the least of these. Taking care of the widows, taking care of the orphans, taking care of the prisoner, taking care of the outcast. All of the rejects of society, right? All the people that don't have a place to go. And we as a church are called to reach those people. But it's also modeled and taught within the context of within the church body. We take care of each other, and as our needs are met, it actually gives us the ability to better reach the needs outside of the church. And so we're gonna really take a look at that and what that means today. And so the topic today, as I already said, is our church serves other. And the core value there, kind of where we stand on that is 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. I think my translation doesn't match what's on the screen, but it's close enough and you get the idea. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied gifts. Whoever speaks as one speaks as an oracle of God. Whoever serves as one serves by the strength that God supplies, NIV puts it this way: each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. What does that mean? It means you've all been gifted in a certain way, and your gifting is not for your own benefit. Your gifting is for the benefit of others, as a benefit for those around you. And as we do that, you will see a transformation that is happening in the Bible, or in our lives, and we see it in the Bible. And so, probably the most extreme example that we see of this in the Bible is the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. You may be familiar with this story, but if you're not, I want to give you just kind of a quick bird's eye view of what's going on here. This is the night before Jesus' arrest. And so, I don't know about you, but sometimes the timing of things completely changes the context of things, right? So this is the Thursday before Good Friday. We all know Good Friday is the night that Jesus was arrested, he was taken, he was crucified. The Thursday before, he was sharing a meal with the disciples known as the Last Supper. It was during this meal that Jesus stepped aside, put his pride aside, and he washed his disciples' feet. For us, that's a really weird thing to think about, right? Because why is washing feet even a thing? Like, why is that something that even makes any kind of sense at all? Well, again, to put it into context, the way that these types of gatherings would happen, the way that these types of meals would happen, was they had tables that were about 3 inches off of the ground. Their tables were low to the ground. And so when they would eat in these social settings, they would recline. Sometimes when you read the Bible, it says they were reclined at the table. Like, what does that mean? They're just kind of like chilling there? It's like, no, they had these little pillows, and often they were laying on their sides and the table was there. And this was just kind of the way that it was. Well, the way that you would be laying at the table, it would put your feet in precarious situations. There was very likely feet close to food. There's very likely feet close to faces. And they did not have the type of footwear that we have in our days, right? They also didn't have the type of chairs that we have. Why don't we wash feet the way that they did in the Bible times? Because we have chairs and we have tables and we have shoes. But they didn't. And so what you have happening is all of these people traveling in sandals in the Middle East, right? Dirt and probably poop, because they're chilling with donkeys and camels and other livestock, right? So there's dirt, there's poop, there's nastiness, and it's on bare feet, and they would enter a home. And so not only are they bringing that into the home, but now they are reclining at a table with their feet, right? And so the washing of the feet was something that would happen as they entered the home, as kind of a ceremonial, like, hey, welcome to our house. We're going to share a meal together. Let's make sure we don't got nasty feet in each other's faces and food before we eat. So naturally, the job of washing feet was not in high regard. The washing of the feet was left for the lowest of the servants. It's like you've got all of the servants, and then they'd be like claiming seniority. I ain't doing it. It's like, that's the new guy's job, right? And so it's hard to find a modern equivalent. It really is, but but it's like going to someone else's house and cleaning their toilet for them. Not just cleaning their toilet after they were expecting guests over, but cleaning their toilet after a 4-year-old who doesn't know how to use the toilet just got done in there. Right? And going in and cleaning this room, it was not a highly regarded position. So how do we get to the point where Jesus finds it necessary to wash the feet? Now, you think about this. This is actually, if you actually, logically process through what's happening here, this is during the meal. Meaning, we missed the feet washing at the entrance, which is customary. Somebody didn't do their job. It got missed. It got overlooked. Now we're sitting and we're reclining at the table. And you know what the disciples are talking about at this time before Jesus washes their feet? They're talking about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of God. They're arguing over, I'm going to be on Jesus' right-hand man. I'm going to be the lieutenant. I'm going to be the commander. I'm going to be the second in command. I'm going to be the vice president. And Jesus is looking around going, what? Where are our priorities here? Right? And so I can only imagine, and I'm taking a little bit of liberty with my imagination here, but I can only imagine that the conversation was sparked about who was going to be the greatest because of the lingering, unresolved tension of dirty feet. I don't know that to be true, but I don't think that it's a huge leap for them to be like, somebody's got to wash these feet. Well, let me go ahead and throw out my positioning here so that I'm not the one who has to do it. You know, Jesus, I think when the time comes for you to sit on your throne, I'm going to sit to the right hand of you. And naturally, Peter has placed himself solidly in a place that there's no way I could ever imagine I'm going to be the one washing feet. And so there's this tension of the dirty feet happening around the meal, and the disciples are bickering about who has better status, and Jesus does the unthinkable. He gets up, he takes off his outer garment, and he begins washing the disciples' feet. So much to where Peter's like, hey, you can't do that. That's beneath you. And Jesus' response to Peter is essentially, hey, if you don't allow me to do this, you can't be really on a team with me. You can't be in partnership with me. And then Peter, obviously, as one does, goes to the opposite extreme and says, well, then wash my whole body. Jesus is like, Peter, calm down. It's like, I'm going to wash your feet. And so it's with all of this taking place, we get a glimpse of what Jesus really wants to highlight in this story. And it says, it was just before the Passover. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world. Time out real quick. I talked a little bit about the context of the timing of this. How many of you know, if I've got something really bad that's going to happen to me tomorrow and I know it, today it's like treat yourself day, right? If I know tomorrow I've got a major surgery coming up and they're going to slice me open, we're going out to steak tonight. We even do this for prisoners that are on death row, that before they go and see their execution, they get a last meal. They get to choose what. So it's a very natural thing that before I go to endure this terrible thing that's going to happen to me, we're going to make today about me. We're going to take care of the things I want. If any time is an appropriate time to be selfish, it's right now. And it's in that context that Jesus says, actually, no. Actually, we're going to do the opposite. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them to the full extent of his love. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set an example so that you should do as I have done for you. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So everything in this scenario says, I'm too good for this. This is beneath me. That's somebody else's job. It's not my responsibility. And Jesus says, follow my example that no job is too small. No task is too undignified. And no act of service is too low. In fact, you should strive to look for those things to do. Do like I did. Wash each other's feet. Do what I did. Take care of each other's needs. And so we get this word that comes out of this text. And the word is servant. It's where we get the word serve from. Is that if we are going to be ones who serve, that makes us servants. This is a really uncomfortable word, especially given modern context. The word actually, if you go back to the original writing, is actually closer to slave than it is to servant. But we really don't like the word slave, so a lot of more modern translations just use the word servant. But if you actually even break it down further than that, there's seven different Greek words that all translate to our English word servant. There's 7 of them. And so sometimes when doing Bible studies, sometimes when looking at the original text, it's a little bit hard to understand what exactly is trying to be conveyed, because they have 7 different descriptor words, and we're just using the one word. It's like, okay, well, which one are you talking about? What do you mean here? And so what does the Bible exactly mean when it describes us as being servants to each other and servants to others and servants to God? Like I said, there's 7 of these. We don't got time for all 7. We're going to go through 3 today, really just for the sake of time. But who is a servant, and what makes a servant, and what's the context of what's happening? We've got these 3 words, and my wife made me practice the pronunciation of them. So the first one is doulos. Doulos is a bond servant. And so you see this verse, you see this happening, you see this word in context in Mark chapter 9. And it says, sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be the first must be the very last, and the servant to all. Doulos, that word there, that servant word there is doulos. And what it is it's a bond servant. What does that mean? What it means is it's a voluntary commitment. It's a lifetime commitment, but it's a voluntary commitment. How does that work? Well, slavery back in the day was a lot different than our modern understanding of slavery. And if you found yourself indebted to somebody, you had the option to go and to work for them, to pay off your debt. And so a lot of people often found themselves indebted to someone, and so really they became like employees to that person. And they were servants, they were slaves under the law of the land, that they could pay off what they owed, they could pay off their debts through this servitude. But then under Jewish law, what would happen is every 7 years, all debts were forgiven. I'm going to sign up for that, right? I'm going to maybe take some notes out of the Bible here. But every 7 years, the debts were forgiven, and these servants were released to go back out to their families, go back out to do whatever they wanted to do. And what you found was oftentimes the servant had such deep respect for their master or for their boss that they didn't want to be released, that they would approach them and they would say, can I continue to serve under you? Can I continue to be your servant? And they would be told, well, your debts have been forgiven, you're free to go. And they would say, no, actually, I want to voluntarily stay and commit to a lifetime of just serving under you, because it's so much better serving in your household than it ever was. I got myself upside down in debt for a reason. Like, life's pretty good here. And so what they would do is they would commit themselves to a lifetime of service, and they were called a bond servant. And that's that word, doulos. And they would actually, to market, they would go and they'd get their ear pierced. And they would get their ear pierced, and it would be a dedication that I am dedicated to be a lifetime commitment under this household. And it was a voluntary thing. And it would happen after the debt was already forgiven, which is really fascinating. And so when the Bible's telling us that we must be the last and be the servant of all, what it's saying is a voluntary commitment, a voluntary lifetime commitment to serve other people, to put other people in front of ourselves. The next word is diakonios. See, I practiced it and everything. Diakonios. And the biblical example here is Matthew 20. It says, whoever wants to be great among you must first be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and he gave his life as a ransom for many. This word is where we get the word deacon from. Now, you immediately go to thinking of church government and what a deacon is, and we have grossly misapplied the word deacon of what a deacon really is. But this idea of this type of servant, a better picture, a better equivalent to this type of servant would actually be like a waiter or a server at a restaurant. And what that means is that they're constantly looking for a need that needs to be met. So if you're at a restaurant and your cup gets empty, the server comes and refills your cup. You see that your plates are dirty, they come and they remove your plates, if they're a good one. Sometimes they're not. Tip them good either way, because Jesus would, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But this idea of see a need, meet a need, that this type of servanthood is almost like on the prowl, looking for areas where they can help other people. The key word here is focused on other people. The principle being focused on the needs of other people. So just like a server in a restaurant would go from table to table looking for the empty cups, this type of servant, as they walk through the grocery store, or if they're driving down the road and they see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire, they're looking for that opportunity to see a need and to meet the need. And so we're told that anyone who wants to be great must learn how to do this. So what does that mean? It means if you're on the way to a church event, it's okay to be late if you see someone who needs help. Because being a servant of other people is helping those who are in need, right? And finding a need and meeting a need. I said that modern comparison would be the waiter or the server. It's focused on the needs of others. The third word we're going to talk about today is huperietis. Nailed it. And this is an under rower. What does an under rower mean? It's literally the picture of the people rowing the boat that are in the galleys of the boat. And so if you've ever seen the movie Ben-Hur, there's the with the right? And so what's the principle here? The principle is these are the people that keep things going. They keep things moving. The boat wouldn't get to where they're going without the rowing and the rowing and the rowing. But what's the dirty little secret, if you will? They're nameless faces. They're anonymous. You don't know, they're in the galleys of the boat. If you don't go down there, you don't even know what's making the boat go. If you're up above, you just know the boat's going. You don't know how many people it's taking to keep this thing moving. You don't know the work that's being done behind the scenes to keep the things moving. And the principle here is that it doesn't magnify me when I do it. So when we set up a serve day and we're going and we're picking up trash on the side of the road, it's not so that we can put our big discovery banner on so that they can say, hey, look how good that church is. But it's the idea that we do it even in an anonymous kind of way so that we can magnify Jesus. Acts 26:16 puts it this way. Now get up and stand on your feet. I have appeared to you to appoint you as a servant and as a witness for what you have seen and will see of me. What they're doing is they're putting that focus back on Jesus. So we're out and we're doing things, and I was talking with the team this morning. We're one of the things as a church, with this being one of our core values of serving one another, is we want to give you all the resources to participate in serving others. And we're going to organize things as a church for you to come in, for you to walk this out in your own life, for you to be able to participate in that with us. The one that we have on the calendar already that's coming up in May is a trail cleanup day. We've been doing these trail cleanup days for a while. Chris Peckham organizes them and puts them together. And we go out to the trails. And last time we were fixing the path. We were putting rocks where they need to be for the bikers so that they don't come around the corner and like Dave. How's your collarbone? Okay. And so we are, as a church, going to give more and more opportunities for us to do this together. But also, we just believe that it should be in our DNA as Christians, that this is some things that should just kind of naturally be coming out of us. And so you put these three words together to get a rounded picture of what a biblical servant is. And you get a lifetime commitment to serve people's needs in such a way that it magnifies Jesus and not me. A lifetime commitment to serve other people's needs in such a way that it magnifies Jesus and not me. So if we're going to accomplish this, if we're going to live out a servant mentality, if we're going to take care of the needs of one another, I believe that there are four principles. Well, we talked about the principles already, but there's four characteristics that you will find in the heart of a servant. And these are the parts that make you uncomfortable, maybe. if you're anything like me. Maybe you're a robot and you're just like, love to embrace this and it makes you feel really good. But if you're human like me, you read some of this and you go, man, that doesn't, could I not? But Jesus says do it. So we're going to go for it. The heart of a servant. Number one, a servant puts service over status. This is what you see literally in the story that we just read of Jesus. That the status of literally being the king and the savior and the coming Messiah did not eliminate him from being able to serve other people. Philippians 2:3-4 says, Do nothing out of selfish ambition or out of vain conceit. Rather, in humility, this is the hard one, value others above yourself, not looking for your own interests, but looking for others' interests instead. That there's no status that you can reach in life. And I'm not talking about like within the church or without the church. I'm talking like if you get voted President of the United States, serving other people is not beneath you. So if you are the CEO of your company, if you are the business owner of your company, or if you're the entry-level employee at your company, no matter what status you achieve, if you're going to have a servant's heart, you're going to put the service above your status. Means I'm not too good to scrub a toilet. I'm not too good to scrub a toilet. For the guys that come, and I'm so grateful every Saturday that we're here setting up, they aren't too good to set up a chair or to run a cable or to sweep a floor. That the act of serving for the church is not beneath them. And I'm so grateful that we have people in our church that have that servant's heart. That we've got Tasha over in kids' church, that wiping boogies is not beneath her status. If we're gonna have a church that operates and functions, we have to be willing to put our pride aside to take care of the needs of one another. I'm not too good for that. That's not beneath me. What's another heart of a servant? This one's fun. A servant puts character over comfort. I think a lot of times we trick ourselves into thinking that God just wants us to be happy and comfortable. It's just not true. Like He values joy. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit, but joy don't always equate to happy. It's like if God just wanted happiness for us, then He would not care about things that it's like if I just want my kids to be happy, and I do want my kids to be happy, but I don't always want my kids to be happy. Sometimes I want my kids to grow and to learn and mature. And in order for them to grow and learn and mature and develop character, sometimes that means they're going to be unhappy. That's just the truth. And so if we are going to grow and be stretched and mature into the holy people that God's called us to be, sometimes that might not fit what we wanted in our agenda. And it might, dare I say, make us a little unhappy. But if my kids were always happy, they'd sleep in my bed, all of them, every night. They'd wake me up at 4 a.m. to get a bowl of ice cream for breakfast. We ain't doing that. Right? And so we have to, and God's the same way with us. And we see this pictured so beautifully in the story of the Good Samaritan. If you're not familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan, dude busted up on the side of the road. He's broken down, he's beat up, he's on the verge of death. But good news, the pastor's walking by. Nope, not good news. The pastor just pretends like he doesn't see him. Keeps on walking. Oh, but good news. The church member goes by. And the church member goes, I can't go over there. And then comes the Samaritan. And a lot of times what we overlook in the story of the Good Samaritan is the racial tension between the Jews and the Samaritans. It wasn't just some random citizen. It was the enemy. You think racial tensions are bad in our country? So just picture the most racial tension event that you can picture, whatever that is in your mind. You know, if it's a protest or a rally or whatever, and the opposing sides, and the person from that side is the one who is beat up, and the person from that side is the one who crosses over the lines to go help them. That's what the picture of the Good Samaritan is. That's the racial tension that is associated with this story. And so the character of the Samaritan, that feeling deep down in my guts that I know the right thing to do and I'm going to do it even if it puts me outside of my comfort zone, is really what kind of servitude Jesus is calling us all to. So I love the way that Martin Luther King put it, actually. This is kind of a paraphrase, but Martin Luther King put it this way. He said, "We often ask, what will happen to me if I do this thing?" And we're thinking about our own comfort. We're thinking about our own endangerment. We're thinking about what might affect us or how we might be affected. He goes on to say the better question to ask is, what will happen to them if I don't? We look and we ask ourselves, what will happen to me if I do this thing? But putting character over comfort is asking the question, what will happen to them if I don't? And so I was talking with some of these guys, it was just coincidence. They were asking about Levi and our son over here sleeping on Nikki, and about how hard it was to take him in with all of his disabilities and his hard shortcomings and physical disabilities and all that. That must be hard to have him in your home. It is. It's very hard. But we couldn't not. Right? And this isn't a puff me up, pat me on the back kind of way. It's just a really good example. We looked at his life and we said, what would happen to that kid if we don't take him in? What would happen to him if we don't take him in? It's empathy. It's looking outside of, how is this going to affect my sleep patterns? Which it does. It's going outside of, how is this going to affect my budget? Which it does. And looking beyond my comfort for the benefit of somebody else. That's the picture that we're given. Number 3, a servant puts we over me. A lot of times we justify not getting involved because, well, I'm doing my own thing over here. But if you look in the early church, you see this illustrated, I already talked about this in the Acts chapter 2 church, that all the believers were together and had everything in common. That they sold property and they gave to anyone who was in need of anything. There's things that we can't accomplish. We just can't accomplish them if we're doing it by ourselves. But when we come together and we put the value of community and we put the value of being a church together, our impact goes further. Our impact goes further. If you didn't know, this church, we're kind of still in the process of setting some of this up. But when we're done setting this up, This church tithes. What does that mean? It means 10% of what comes in financially to Discovery Church goes to benefit other missions outside of our church. That we believe in the principle of tithing as individuals. We also believe that the church should model that principle of giving. And so we believe in missions. We believe in local missions. We believe in global missions. And we may never be able to go step foot at an orphanage in India. But when we come together, we can send resources to people who are doing that. And our reach goes further. We're in the works of putting together short-term mission trips for us to go on. For us to go, we have relationship with orphanage down in Mexico. That Nikki and I, when we were dating, we went down there. And we went and we met with these kids and we began to see what they were going through. And we drove through Tijuana, Mexico, and past the tourist part of Mexico and into the slums of Mexico. And there's something that happens when you see the need that's really right there. And I think a lot of times we don't do anything because we choose not to acknowledge that the need is there. And so when we come together and we put the we in front of the me, now we have the ability to go on a trip to make an impact. And I think about Susie and Brian going over to the Ukraine. And some of the things that they were able to accomplish over in the Ukraine. They would have never been able to do those things as solitary citizens going over to make an impact. But when they partner with a place like Samaritan's Purse, they're able to as a unit, go and accomplish more. We want to do that here. We're in the baby stages of that. But we give to Hope Coffee, which is providing jobs all throughout Africa. We're going to be partnering with Hope for Justice, which partners with local police department to rescue sex traffickers, people that have been sex trafficked, to get them out of their bondage, to rescue those who have been kidnapped. We have resources on college campuses that we give to Chi Alpha to reach the next generation on campus. We give to YWAM to reach those college age brackets. That these are things that we as individuals aren't going to be able to accomplish by ourselves, but when we come together and we have that we mentality, we can be a force for the kingdom of God, that we can actually have an impact on our community out there. And you see it again in Matthew chapter 25. It says, "The righteous will I answer him." And what's happening, this is a picture of the end time where Jesus comes and he's separating out goats from sheep. It's all metaphorical. He's saying, hey, you people over here, and I'm going to talk to you guys in these different ways. And he's going to talk to one group. He's going to say, thank you for taking care of me. And they're going to ask him, when did we see you when you were hungry, feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in? When did we clothe you? When did we do these things? When did we see a sick person and visit them? When did we go see you in prison? And the king will reply, I tell you, whenever you did this for the least of me, for the least of these brothers and sisters, you did it for me. And so there is a calling on Christians and on the Christian church to see a need and to meet a need. To see a need and to meet a need. And to be of service to those people. I'm talking doing plumbing for free. Not always. You got to pay your bills. I get that. But the idea of, man, I've got an extra car, and that's a single mom without one. You can have mine. I've seen it done. It's an awesome thing. Those are the types of things that God has called us to. And a servant puts worship over wealth. I'm not saying having money is a bad thing. But what I am saying is that Jesus called us to use our wealth, to use our resources, to use our gifts, to use our abilities for the benefit of not ourselves. For us to do it within the context of our church family, if we're following the biblical model of what that early church did, ain't none of us should ever have a problem paying our bills. We just shouldn't. We should be able to be there for one another, to know when a need is needed. And as we pool those resources, as we come together, as we give faithfully to the church, then it expands our ability to go outside of these walls and to pay for a meal, pay for a night in a hotel, pay for whatever other needs come our way. Replace a vehicle. Man, I cannot wait for the day where we're giving houses and cars away. Why not? I say all the time, like, I have a dream of being a church that just doesn't ever have to say no to anything. You come in the door, you ask us for it, you got it. It don't hurt us to give. That we can be generous with our giving and taking care of the needs of others. But it starts with a servant's heart. It starts with taking care of each other's needs and coming together as a church to actively look for an empty cup of water that we can fill back up. And we as a church, like I said, we have our first serve day on the calendar is our trail cleanup, but we're going to go beyond that. Now, my dream is to be best friends with the mayor of Prescott, so that if something happens, the mayor can text me, hey, do you got someone who can come help with this cleanup? You got it, we're there. What if Discovery Church was the first call when there was a hurricane? Obviously, we don't get hurricanes here. But what if a fire swept through Prescott? God, I hope it doesn't. But what if they knew we could call Discovery Church and they're going to have 50 volunteers to go dig through the rubbish and to help clean it up? That's what the church was meant to be. That's what the church was designed to be. Schools built by the church. The OG church, schools back in the day. Universities were founded by the Christians. Hospitals were founded by the Christians. If you look throughout history, when a plague happened, it was the Christians running towards the disaster, not running away and hiding from it. And I believe that if we're going to be a church that has the true impact that God wants us to have, not just locally, but globally, because I believe that we should be supporting global missions as well, if not participating in global missions. I dream of sending missionaries out of this place. Go to China. We'll bless you on your way, so I don't have to go. And but it starts with that mindset. It starts with that servant's heart. And I believe God's cultivating that, and me personally, He wants to cultivate that within our church. And I would venture to guess that He might be stirring within you. How can I better serve? How can I better serve my neighbor? How can I better serve my church family? How can I better serve my actual physical neighbor, not just like metaphoric neighbor, but the person who actually lives next door to me? And I believe that as we seek after the opportunities to look for needs, man, when you start looking for needs, you'll find them. I promise. But I think too often we intentionally shy away from seeing them. And so the challenge this morning is let's look for those needs so that we can help be a part of the solution. My closing thought is cheesy, but I think it's worth it. A lot of times we ask God in our prayer time, God, why don't you do something about this? And I think a lot of times his answer, you're laughing, he said, man, I did do something. I made you. So be the something. I say it almost every week when we're talking about prayer requests. I believe that sometimes we are the answer to somebody else's prayer. So let's look for those opportunities, church. I look forward to seeing the cool testimonies that will come from us developing servant hearts and getting out and serving each other and serving our community. Will you pray with me? God, I pray you give us opportunities, that you open our eyes to see the hurt in the world around us, that we are able to step in to the void, to see a need, to meet a need, and to be people who always point that focus and that glory back to you. That we don't do it for selfish motives, we don't do it for selfish reasons, we do it because you have called us to live that life. And God, thank you that there's a built-in little benefit that we get something out of it called joy. We love you so much. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We're done here today, guys. We're so glad you're here. Man, grab some coffee or something on your way out, because Nikki made 2 tubs of coffee. No, she just made 1. Bring a friend with you next week, and man, let's just see what God does in our church. Love you guys.